Now, as you may know, Senator Jim Molan is on sick leave at the moment, trying to deal with a cancer diagnosis. But he's written a piece today in The Australian which urges the government to prepare now for what may soon be a war in our region between China and Taiwan. The former Major General doesn't rule out Australia coming under attack and says we can no longer rely on the United States to come to our aid. Meanwhile, over the weekend, more threats from Beijing towards our politicians this time, who China says are joining forces with terrorists in condemning the government's treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Extraordinary stuff. A Foreign Ministry spokesman said Canberra will be burned, whatever that means. To discuss how we need to prepare for what's ahead, I'm joined now by Michael Shoebridge, Director of Defence and Strategy at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Thank you for your time, Michael.
Great to talk with you.
We've had plenty of friction in the last 2 years between Australia and China, which has led to these trade breakdowns. And now, just in the last 2 weeks, the word war has been installed in the conversations. Are we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit too much?
Well, I think we've got to be clear about what our regional environment looks like. You know, we're having this ridiculous domestic debate about who's saying what to whom here in Australia. And we seem to be overlooking the nasty but empirically true facts about the way the Chinese government is growing their military power and using their military power. So there should be a proper discussion in Australia about that. What are the implications for Australian and regional security in the way that Xi is using and growing Chinese military power? So I think that's a discussion we have to have, and we need to have less of the furious light and noise about who's beating up the prospects of war and who's not, because this is not really so much about us, it's about what China is doing.
OK, so we presume, or should we not presume anything, that China may take Taiwan militarily, and I guess we cannot presume then that the US will come to Taiwan's aid. That's the suggestion from Jim Molan today. Would you agree?
No, I don't think we have to presume that China has plans to take Taiwan by military force. Their leader, Xi Jinping, has said that he has plans to unify Taiwan with the mainland by force. He has said he has those plans. He's quite clearly, with his actions on Hong Kong, ending the one country, two systems model for Hong Kong, ruled out that same model as something that anyone on Taiwan can believe. But America, I think, is able to be relied on by Taiwan and the rest of the region in understanding that Taiwan's security matters to all of us. And certainly for Australia, we're an island democracy of 26 million people in the Indo-Pacific. Surely the future and freedom of an island of around 23 million people in the Indo-Pacific that's a democracy matters to us too.
Yeah, see, that's the interesting thing. There are some people who would argue, why are we getting involved in something that really is an issue, as they say, the China-Taiwan issue, between China and Taiwan, with, of course, the US weighing into it. But what's it got to do with Australia? What's your response to people who suggest that we should butt out of it?
Well, I think my first response is that's the Beijing government's narrative, and you should always be careful when you're parroting the Beijing government's line back with your own voice. That's the first thing I'd say to people that say those things. Next one is, if an island democracy of 23 million people's security doesn't matter and no one should help them, then why on earth should anyone think that we would get help? So collective security matters and democracy matters. Second one is, if Taiwan just as a piece of real estate is important, then it's fundamentally important for how China can project power more broadly. Taiwan not being in the ownership of the Chinese state constrains the Chinese military's projection of power. Then there's the sheer economics. Taiwan is a centre of semiconductor global capacity and technology. It'd be a massive own goal to give that gift to the Chinese economy and take that gift away from the democratic world.
They're very sound arguments. I want to play something from Dan Tehan, Federal Minister, who had this to say about these furthering arguments over war and military preparedness. This is Dan Tehan. No, we don't have it? We'll play Dan Tehan now.
Given our two countries' different histories, different worldviews, and different political and legal systems, New Zealand and China are going to take different perspectives on important issues. We will continue to work these through in a consistent manner, as we have always done. But as Minister Mahuta said last month, we need to acknowledge that there are some things on which China and New Zealand do not, cannot, and will not agree.
Jacinda Ardern, of course, the Prime Minister for New Zealand, not Dan Tehan, although Dan did say something today. What are your thoughts about New Zealand's role in all of this? They have, in terms of trade, been very careful not to upset the Chinese. Is that something they might stick to in terms of China v Taiwan?
Well, I think New Zealand policy makes me think of that saying, hope is not a method. They really have a policy that looks very like Australia's back in 2012. It might have been fit for purpose for the China we had in 2012. It doesn't work with the China we have in 2021. I think New Zealanders will come to understand that in coming years, and their policy, as they experience the nature of Chinese power, will look a lot more like Australia's unless they want to give up on their interests and values.
Michael Shoebridge, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.